Good morning and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Today's topic is BI governance, making it a reality. And our guests for today's show are Russom. Philip Russom is the TDWI Research Director for Data Management. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Pretty good. I'm doing fine. How are you, Sanjog?
Very good. And where are you based out of?
I work out of my home office in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Okay, so did you enjoy a lot of windy weather and rainy season over the last few weeks?
Oh, yeah. We had Hurricane Irene and then a lot of rain from Lee. So we've had a lot of rain lately.
Okay, good. So thank you so much. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
And we also have George Surdu, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer with Comerica. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Sanjog.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
So how many hours you're still working in a day, 20 or 24?
If you're in the IT profession, it's pretty constant. Running the IT organization, it's, as you might expect, 24/7. So.
Oh, hey, you know what? God bless. And hopefully one of these days you'll get to take a 2-week vacation.
There we go.
And so the topic we picked up today, we did a couple of shows the last 2 weeks around BI. We spoke about mobile BI and we spoke about what's about to come and how BI is going to become critical and strategic to most organizations. Now, with all the emphasis that we're putting in and the investments and dollars that we are putting in here, we need to make sure that investment is not just a flash in the pan. We don't get one big output and or ROI out of it and then it fizzles out. We got to keep this going and keep evolving as the world changes around us. So with that said, the word governance comes to the surface and we would like to explore the governance portion. So Philip, I'd like to start with you. Do you think we have reached a point of maturity in the BI space that a BI governance framework, which is standard and which is mature, is available for most of the world to apply and feel good about the fact that there will be predictability on an ongoing basis whenever we're going to put BI initiatives in place?
The short answer is yes. And to add some more details to that, I work for the Data Warehousing Institute, or we go by the acronym TDWI. We actually provide training courses in BI governance and related governance fields. One of the things we'll have to sort out today is there's more than one form of governance, isn't there? So we also have courses in data governance and IT governance. And so we do find a lot of our members and other people that I talk to as part of my research moving to different types of BI governance. And governance tends to have a kind of scope to it. So I would say a lot of our members actually more commonly have data governance. It's just that BI products are so much based on data that data governance will, of course, influence a BI program. But others prefer to have their governance to have a scope over their BI programs, which includes their data warehousing and data integration solutions. And so they look at BI from that direction. But I'm just pointing that out so you understand. In my world, I commonly find people who have BI governance and related data governance programs, and some of them were founded as early as 2003.
Now, with that said, George, may I ask you that when in your organization or any of your counterparts and peers that you might have seen in other companies have tried to implement BI, have they been, if you were to take a poll, how many of them would have a mature BI governance in place?
I think I'm where Philip said. I think it is becoming a much more mature stage in terms of our thinking and our focus. I think for most companies in terms of implementation, we're really at a very early stage. So I've seen some that are certainly a ways down the path, but many others are really at that early formative stage. I think BI is really part of a broader focus that I'll call information management. So it's the whole information management space, understanding and managing data from cradle to grave and information from cradle to grave. And of course, business intelligence is really part and parcel to that. So more and more companies clearly at the bank, our focus is around getting a much deeper understanding of our customers, a 360-degree view. And that's really why that space has become so important. And governance has become so important.
Now, any kind of, like when we talk about PMO, when we talk about IT governance, we talk about compliance, we talk about any BI governance also. it is to some extent, when you do numbers, it looks like an overhead. And it's also in many cases subjective. It is the frameworks that are out there are not detailed to the point where you can really follow blindly and you will still get to where you want to get to. They are rather broad guidelines which people adopt to their own respective needs. But then that's where the interpretation is where the things perhaps fail and are not interpreted properly. And that's why, number one, companies say that we do not have the extra money to really put a lot of money and an investment into governance, or if they do, then there is a problem with the interpretation. So Philip, if you were to look back across the board where you talk to a lot of people and indulge in research, what has been the common denominator overall?
Yeah, your question hits a lot of stuff, so I'll try to get as many of it as I can recall. I think, for one thing, you were mentioning budget and the kind of investment, whether it's a monetary investment or a people investment. I think the kind of investments that are required to get a BI governance program going vary from one life cycle stage of governance to another. I've talked to people who do IT governance. They told me some similar stuff. One thing I want to get out on the table, I think of BI governance and data governance. Those are the two forms I deal with most of them. I think of them as first and foremost being people and process. And do you really need extra budget for that? There is a cost because people's time does cost money. A lot of times the kind of managers you need to serve on some kind of governance board or committee, these are high payroll people, so there's going to be a cost to their time. And of course, people do push back. They'll say stuff to me like, I've got this day job and it takes 10 to 12 hours a day. Where am I going to fit in time for another committee, a board meeting, and this kind of thing? So to get governance going, quite often you need to have some kind of organizational team like that, and it's committee work. We have our day jobs and we do the committees anyway. But I've seen enough people get through the maturity life cycle stages to know that later, for governance to continue to grow and to scale up to govern more stuff, you do typically need some kind of software to help you automate the process of governance, as well as, if you're really going to do this out on the leading edge, to automate the kind of data monitoring and reprofiling that you might do in support of governance. And so it's typically 18 months into a successful data governance or BI governance program where people have done the people and process thing, they prove their concept, and then they start looking for tools that will help them with governance. And I have to say, nowadays, it's odd that there really aren't many vendors offering governance tools per se. So we find people using different things that help them collaborate, like their enterprise portal, or if they have some collaborative platform. If they're trying to collect information about the data they're governing, they may co-opt the functionality of metadata repositories and stuff like that. But you get the idea. The requirements and investment are really quite different at the beginning, where it's people and process, as opposed to more successful stages where you start to need some software to automate it.
Now, with that said, George, the question here is the three level of maturity or sexiness, if you will, that has been introduced by Philip here. One is that you could do BI governance even on a paper napkin or a notebook. Second is to basically put a software. And third is actually build some monitoring tools. As you keep investing at these different levels or to bring different level of sophistication, what incremental value is perceived and in fact is created for us to justify that this additional effort and investment is made?
First of all, let me go back to what Philip has said just to start, and then I'll answer your question directly. I'm, again, in total agreement with Philip's thinking. It is part of the problem is companies, when they begin to look at this, they look at it as a generic IT governance framework, and it is far from that. Effective governance really requires, as Philip said, focus on the business processes. There's a data management practice and policy piece to this. There's clearly a technology piece to this, and there's also a cultural piece to this. So as we have been looking at this, quite frankly, what sells at the end of the day, and I'll come back to this 360-degree view, which is really more and more companies, I believe, are looking at how do we drive revenue? And clearly, it's to have a much deeper understanding of our customers. So if you look in banking as an example, if you look at Comerica really has three primary lines of business. There's retail banking, there's commercial banking, and there's private banking. We call it wealth and institutional management, but it's the high worth customers. having a complete view of our customers across those spaces is really, really important in terms of cross-sell and really aligning our products and services most effectively to our customers. So first and foremost was a revenue opportunity here. There's also a reduction in cost, our ability to be able to tee up programs and to have deep insights, because what sits over the top of all of this is not, for years we talked about business intelligence. So really having enterprise data warehouses and be able to have a view of the data that we hadn't before from an intelligence standpoint. But the next level is really around business analytics. It's being able to analyze that data in very deep ways that provide us greater insight in the kinds of programs, products, and services we want to deliver to our customers, and to have a much better view, a higher probability that it's going to be successful. And that in and of itself hits both cost reduction and risk mitigation. And then, of course, there's the other part around compliance. What we see in banking is we've seen many examples already in our own space in terms of through the deeper business intelligence capabilities we have, there's fraud prevention opportunities. I mentioned customer service improvement, better ability to get to data, and so forth. So lots of opportunity, quite frankly, and I think organizations are starting to see that. And that takes them all the way back to data in and of itself. And the comment I made about it's not just an IT issue. At the end of the day, the business owns their data. That is their data. That's not IT data. And getting them to better understand how to leverage that which they own has been part of the success of moving this program forward.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. And then if you were to really look at the BI governance, and then we speak about the data and data quality, is that something that you can improve just because you have better BI governance, or BI governance is more about if you got everything taken care of, then let's bring a policeman or a crew who's going to make sure that you have the BI portion, the wrapper portion working okay. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back and explore.
We're always talking business. Talk to an expert. Call now, toll free, 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
We live in an instant-on world, mobile and connected. To compete, you want data center flexibility, so you can adapt quickly to changing business needs while keeping information safe. Introducing Enterprise Cloud Compute Services, HP's solution for managing secure servers, storage, and networks, delivered as a service. Pay only for what you need. Create order out of chaos. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Start shaping your cloud at hp.com. We live in an instant-on world, mobile, connected, and fluid. Competing in this world takes a special kind of workplace technology that adapts to change, that allows seamless and personalized interaction. Introducing Workplace 360, HP's full lifecycle desktop management solution, delivered as a service. User subscriptions allow you to gain financial control and flexibility. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Visit hp.com for answers.
The business community's first choice in Internet Talk Radio. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So, Philip, I'll ask a question. Before the break, George mentioned about the data quality, and that's something that, of course, is very important for the very BI program to succeed, because that is what's the source that you're playing with. Now, with that said, do you think BI governance should be able to, or it should be made accountable for getting the data quality in place, or is it more at a superficial level where all the groundwork has already been done and you just want the pretty reports to come out on a regular basis, and that's what BI governance allows you to do?
Again, you're asking the right questions. The quality of data is something that is governable and also should be governed. The question is, do you govern the quality of data through a BI governance program? I have to say I'm more, and I do see that happening, but quite often it would be only the quality of data that is used within the BI infrastructure. Most of the data going through BI ends up in reports. So the data from the data warehouse and similar databases going into reports, quite often the BI governance program will just govern the quality of that data. And of course, there's far more data across the enterprise, isn't there? So when I see data governance programs, they typically strive for a more enterprise scope. And so for data quality across an enterprise, quite often it's a data governance program that I do see. And I have to say, data quality, believe it or not, has been a strong precedent that ensures the success of governance for both BI and data. If you're familiar with data quality programs, they quite often have a people and process built into it for what's called data stewardship. And data stewardship really sets a wonderful precedent that a lot of companies can follow and evolve it into governance for data and BI. So with data stewardship, you typically have stewards who are highly collaborative. They're talking to technical people who know data, know how it's used in a variety of applications, including BI applications. But they're also talking to a wide variety of business people. Stewards spend a lot of time with line of business managers, asking them, if we could improve data in one area and that would improve your line of business, what would that area be? So the steward has a real talent for prioritizing data that needs to be improved in terms of quality. But we're here to talk about governance. What does that have to do with governance? See, there is a tradition through stewardship for collaboration, finding what needs to be paid attention. That can go into governance. But also, we have a tradition of creating metrics to describe the quality of data. And if you think about the kind of policies that a data governance or BI governance program would create, they may create policies that will define the level, the standards for the quality of data. So we already have a really good precedence through data quality and data stewardship programs. And so I'm seeing a lot of that moving straight into governance programs. And for a lot of companies, actually, their data governance 1.0 is actually more like stewardship 2.0. See what I mean? For a lot of companies, it's a direct causal relationship.
So, yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, it's just to make a couple other comments about data integrity, Sanjog. If you think about data integrity, obviously it starts with data entry and are we entering the right data in the right places? But systemically, if you look broader at how does data, because it clearly has to be accurate or else all of this breaks down, how does it get out of sync? And I think that's where governance comes into play again. And that is one of the elements of governance. As new initiatives come in play, the first question becomes, do I already have that? Historically, over the years, because of the maturity of technology, et cetera, whether it was for performance reasons or what have you, we have created extracts upon extracts. And so we've got data repositories all over the place. And over time, they get out of sync. And then depending on what you're looking at, the integrity of the data gets questioned. Downstream, with a strong information management governance and a BI governance, what you really get into is as new initiatives come to play or requirements come in, the first question becomes, do I already have that? You don't need to go build that. That repository already exists. That data resides someplace else. You do not need to create yet another version of it. And I think that's really important from a systemic standpoint in terms of keeping data healthy.
Now, when you talk about data quality and integrity, do you think BI governance can empower and enable both these two areas?
Absolutely. Because again, putting a strong governance program in front of solutions before they get built as part of architecting that solution, designing that solution is key to cleaning this thing up.
So, Philip, do you think we can truly say this is a good BI framework versus this is not as a BI governance framework? I'm sorry. So what are the guidelines for you to literally benchmark a framework itself? Because people might interpret it differently and eventually they will adopt it in a totally different manner. But then what the end state is what's going to determine how well do you do with your BI programs going forward.
Yeah, I can answer that. And this also allows me to bring up something we haven't talked about yet, which is the staffing of BI governance or data governance. And in fact, I mentioned earlier, you might have a committee or board. Believe it or not, sometimes people will create what's called a competency center for governance. There are different kinds of organizational structures, but for your benchmark, I would say number one is you do need a team. It might be obvious. A lot of people just have a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, yeah, governance. I need a committee or a board. Yes, you do. So you have to have a team. And then number two, you have to be very careful about the staffing of the team, especially who chairs that committee or board. And part of my job, Sanjog, is to run surveys and to create some statistics representing some of this stuff. So for my survey audience, which admittedly it's pretty heavy on BI and data warehousing people, right? So their views tend to get represented in my surveys, but a lot of them are involved in enterprise data in general. So if I look at BI governance and data governance, quite often there is not one chair, there's actually two chairs. And the reason is you typically need someone representing the business, someone representing technology. That's a reason for two. And the way it often breaks out is you typically have someone representing the business who would be somebody like George on the call here, someone who's a chief officer and has a certain amount of clout, someone who carries the proverbial big stick and can tell people governance is something we need to do for the business, so everybody put you back into it and push. And then you have someone who's more the technical co-chair, and that man or woman tends to make things happen in terms of looking at the technologies, the applications, the data that is prospectively to be governed. And part of the governance board is they have to make decisions. What do we govern? What don't we govern? That kind of thing. So the second benchmark is you quite often the two co-chairs for business and IT. It is a success factor. And then number three for your benchmark, I think you would continue that thought all the way down as you flesh out the committee. So believe it or not, I find a line of business managers to be extremely useful committee members for both the BI governance and data governance, because they can tell you what the problems are with data that they want to have addressed through governance. They want to have better standards for quality, something we already talked about. But a lot of line of business managers want to get data from other lines of business. So believe it or not, governance doesn't just control data, it also enables the sharing of data. So a lot of governance boards are working on standards. What are our standard interfaces if we're going to exchange data between lines of business? What data models do we use and so forth? So the business people can actually give you a lot of information about what they need to do for their business relevant to information in its governance. They can also tell you what they need just to be more successful with BI and making better decisions. And then, of course, you need a variety of technical people who are specialists in the various forms of data and its management. So I think those are the 3 points for your benchmarks.
I couldn't agree more. I think as we've been talking this morning, this is a partnership between business and technology, and has to be that partnership. We're all focused very crisply on speed, the speed of delivery, speed of execution. And if the governance program is viewed as slowing things down, it will quickly break down. But with both players, basically both parties in the game together, it actually will allow us to have much more rapid and flexible development. So really important to have both elements part of the program.
Now, let me ask you this, Philip, perhaps I did not hear properly. You mentioned that there should be two chairs. One would be someone like George, another person who is going to deal with the deep down tactical level technology implementation. But both of these people are from IT. When we are talking about a partnership with business, then this governance framework actually should have somebody from the business area versus both people from IT trying to drive it. Would you agree?
That's a good point. And it's funny, the statistics I've developed through surveys is very similar to statistics I've developed for sponsoring a BI program. It's just funny. You'd think that CIO and CTO would be top of the list among chief officers involved in this stuff. But believe it or not, the chief financial officer is probably the most common chief officer involved in governance and BI. And quite often in a lot of companies, it's really the financial department that's the biggest sponsor of your BI program. And it's quite often the financial department that has the most stringent demands for the standards of data, for its quality, for its modeling, for how it's shared or not shared, who can access it, who cannot. So you can see how the financial department has a lot of skin in the game when it comes to governance issues. So they're real common. And then in a lot of organizations, it's actually the chief marketing officer who's involved in governance. And quite often you got a man or woman who really need the right data in the best condition. And also, marketing departments depend heavily on BI, don't they? Because they're doing a lot of, especially more and more analytics nowadays about customers and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's not just the CIO and CTO. I'm finding the CFO and CMO often involved in BI governance and data governance.
Now, George, what you might have seen in your company and or other places, there might be situations where you might have to really nudge and push the rest of the business, or would that be the case for the most part when it comes to BI governance and data quality and data integrity? Or do you see the business coming back and really hunting you, but then also at the same time not providing the necessary sponsorship support and cooperation as you go about going to the business users at the least level, at the downmost level on the totem pole, and then ask them for cooperation? You don't get it, but then you do not have the business leaders supporting you. Let's explore this when we come back. Where is this power struggle? Because most of these initiatives are not getting the required level of success that they should get. And many times people say businesses that have failed, and business says IT is not doing its job. So where's the problem? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Now you don't have to stay linked to your desktop or laptop. Take Voice America on the go and listen anywhere. Get our mobile app for iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android at the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
We live in an instant-on world, mobile, connected, and fluid. Competing in this world takes a special kind of workplace technology that adapts to change, that allows seamless and personalized interaction. Introducing Workplace 360, HP's full lifecycle desktop management solution, delivered as a service. User subscriptions allow you to gain financial control and flexibility. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Visit hp.com for answers. We live in an instant-on world, mobile and connected. To compete, you want data center flexibility, so you can adapt quickly to changing business needs while keeping information safe. Introducing Enterprise Cloud Compute Services, HP's solution for managing secure servers, storage, and networks, delivered as a service. Pay only for what you need. Create order out of chaos. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Start shaping your cloud at hp.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So, George, my long-winded question, in short, is that who is supposed to make this a success? And because there is a lot of finger-pointing match that starts happening when stakeholders at both ends say, yes, we are ready to support it, but people at the lowest level, who essentially are the ones who are creators of data or who process data, are not the ones supporting this whole initiative. And if we really bring this whole thing down on its knees.
Let me go back in history a bit, because I think historically it was always a push program coming from IT. We really needed to push these thoughts. We were viewed as the one who owns the data, owns the applications, owns the technology. We should be figuring this stuff out. I think that's an old model. I think that's becoming very quickly old thinking. And again, I go back to, for us, the push coming from the business now, and they don't know they're asking this question. I think, quite frankly, around what's it take from a business intelligence standpoint and a business analytics standpoint to make it happen. But they're asking it in a different way. They're back to the 360 view, saying, I need a complete view of our entire customer base, and I need to perform what-if questions against that. That pressure is really, from the business side, driving their much more active involvement. Now, on our side, from a technology side, we are accountable for educating. We always have been, and we need to be. And I think this is an education and an awareness that needs to continue to come from the IT side. We've got to be able to articulate in English what things have to be done to deliver the things they're asking for. And I'm seeing more and more, those two are coming together. In the past, they didn't, but more and more now they are coming together, and there's becoming a better understanding and recognition on the business side of why data governance, BI governance, information management is much more critical than it's ever been.
So, Philip, when you go out and really talk to people, while we did speak about some areas there where they're struggling, but if you were to inventory the areas where BI governance is failing because obvious and perhaps not so obvious reasons, what would those be?
I think the critical success factor, as with a lot of things we do in IT and similar business initiatives, is finding the best and the right starting point. And it's interesting, in my world, governance can actually start from many different places. So when people ask me, okay, great, that's fine, but so where should we start ours? It depends on what your most pressing problems are. Quite often, it's a problem that has to be solved that governance can apply to. Less often, maybe an opportunity. And so the starting points, which will later influence success, tend to fall in two buckets. Joe, let me just ask you a funny question here for a moment. Are you familiar with astrology?
Oh, definitely. I follow it too.
I'm a Libra. What's your sign?
I'm a Pisces.
Okay, great. Well, you know the image of Libra, right? It's the scales, right? It's this, we used to call it a balance probably, right? So it's a scale with two pieces, and the question is, do these balance up or not? So in the form of the governance I deal with, quite often there are starting points that are kind of like these two pieces of the scale, and the question is, do we bring them together or not? So for a lot of organizations, the pain point, which is a good starting place, would be around what we think of as business issues. It could be compliance, related stuff like regulatory reporting. It could be things that are the extended definition of compliance, like the IT security and data privacy and so forth. So I see a lot of people starting there, and if they've got a pain point there and governance can help them be more compliant, if it can help them make sure that more IT systems and business processes that go with them are more secure, if it makes sure that we're complying with whatever privacy policy we've established, then it's going to lead to some level of success. The other side on the Libra balance would be technology issues. So on the first side, for compliance, quite often it's driven top down from business management because those are top of mind aspects for them. On the other side of the balance, it can come more of a grassroots from the bottom up. A lot of times data people are under pressure to improve the quality of data. We already talked about that one. Data quality through governance, reworking stewardship into governance is a starting point. You mentioned master data management at one point, Sanjog, and both data quality and master data management to be successful means that you have to go to people who own applications, own databases. You have to go to business managers who have end users who are using those applications. You have to tell them, look, we want change. See, that's the thing on the technology side of governance. Once you have a governed policy, for the policy to be really fleshed out, people typically have to make some kind of change, right? So that's where you need that executive with the big stick there. If you do change the data so that the quality goes up, and that means that business operations come closer to excellence, it means that the decisions are made better because they're based on more accurate facts, then you're going to have a measure of success. And it's not just data quality, master data management, which is a foundation stone for sharing data broadly across the enterprise. Don't forget, governance is not just about control, it's also about enabling things like that. Then you'll have some success. So anyway, those are the two broad starting points. And if you find the right starting point, usually the success does follow.
Let me make a couple of comments relative to the technology side of this for a moment. I know we've been talking about it takes both parties to make this successful, and obviously I totally agree with that. But let me just focus in on just the IT side for a moment. We are huge believers in simplification and standardization. We live in a very complex world. Technology is unbelievably complex, and anytime you can simplify that and standardize that, we make our life a lot easier. Takes money off the table, allows us to go faster. And as I look at this, it reminds me of years gone by, all the way back to the early days of the mainframe. So one of the wonderful things about the mainframe is that it's 70 plus years old. It has we can run that machine at 101% utilization, which means that I'm running it full out, and if there's more work ready to come in. So the asset utilization of that technology is terrific. It's got very strong resource management capabilities, very strong security capabilities. Then in the 1980s, in came what I call the Wild West. So client-server technology, we have multiple operating systems, multiple programming languages, very little resource management, very little monitoring capabilities, very little security, and we've been digging out of that for 30 years. If we're not careful, companies can find themselves in the same space here. So I believe one of the overarching responsibilities of the technology group is to ensure we provide consistent and standard technology to support this space. So technology has matured greatly and is helping us both in the intelligence side and the analytics side, which is what our business clients, our business partners want. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure it doesn't turn into the Wild West. So setting standards in terms of the technology we're going to use, how we're going to use that technology in addition to how it's going to be architected and designed is all very important. But technology does play, the IT group does play a very key role here. And we can either let this thing get out of hand or we can put some really solid structure around it. And that takes us all the way back to governance.
So do you think people who are not able to do primarily don't have a good backbone? Are there some other factors which prevents them from being able to do it? Because of course, such discussions where you strongly propose that we should be doing this. Now, the word should really in real life does not happen in many cases. So go ahead.
I don't think our focus on standardization and simplification is unique. I don't think it's unique at all. I think everybody is challenging that. We're all, unfortunately, in different places with our legacy solutions. And so we've got to manage through that. So for us, we have what I call a go back strategy and a go forward strategy. So go forward, we're really tough. It's this way or it's no way. Going back, we work through that over time and we use key inflection points to get the legacy stuff in the right place. But I think if people believe that there's some magical EDW in the sky that we're going to create and we're going to throw away all of our data repositories, that's ridiculous. So the technology is allowing us to put an umbrella over a diverse set of input, quite frankly, to give us that virtual view. And again, that's where standard approaches and techniques come into play. And over time, the governance program will get us ultimately to our vision. But this is a journey. This is not something you're going to flip a switch on. It's a journey and it's got to start. And I think, again, more and more companies have realized that they need to start. And so I don't know if that helps or not.
Great, Norman. This is a very good response. Now, the next question, and we'll just take a quick break and we'll come back and start with this. But primarily the new normal that we are seeing today, it is disrupting a lot of things in technology and the way people are doing business and also the way data is getting created in structured and unstructured and in unstructured form. So now the BI itself could be transformed or totally changed for the most part. So now would the BI governance models, frameworks really still hold ground to the ones which we were using traditionally, or even those have to change to accommodate and or completely take the BI, what we want out of BI, to the next level? So what should happen with the very BI governance framework, methodologies, tools, and techniques in order to handle the new normal? Let's explore when we come back. Please stay tuned.
The future of online TV is here. View exclusive content from your favorite talk radio hosts and new programs that you can't see anywhere else. Visit voiceamerica.tv today.
We live in an instant-on world, mobile and connected. To compete, you want data center flexibility so you can adapt quickly to changing business needs while keeping information safe. Introducing Enterprise Cloud Compute Services, HP's solution for managing secure servers, storage, and networks, delivered as a service. Pay only for what you need. Create order out of chaos. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Start shaping your cloud at hp.com. We live in an instant-on world, mobile, connected, and fluid. Competing in this world takes a special kind of workplace technology that adapts to change, that allows seamless and personalized interaction. Introducing Workplace 360, HP's full lifecycle desktop management solution, delivered as a service. User subscriptions allow you to gain financial control and flexibility. The Instant On Enterprise is here. Are you ready? Visit hp.com for answers.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So, Philip, love to take for you to just help us with this and how you feel the world is changing around the new normal, which is the structured and unstructured data that we are receiving and or creating. So what do you think should happen to the BI governance frameworks and the tools, methodologies, techniques, and technology to help take BI to the next level?
We talked all day about this one. I think everybody knows that most data is structured. It's in relational databases, which are really like two-dimensional tables. They got rows and columns. Most applications are collecting data and storing it in similar tables and similar fashion. So those tables, that's by far the primary structure of data we find out there. But George mentioned mainframes. There are older and more diverse types of structured data coming, like the hierarchies and network structures that come out of older mainframe databases. But it's funny, today there's a tremendous amount of unstructured data coming from web sources. Think about the web logs people are collecting. Way out on the leading edge, we're all trying to figure out the neural nets that describe relationships in social media data. So the question is, it's hard enough for people to get their heads wrapped around governing structured data. What do we have to do to govern this unstructured stuff, especially when unstructured stuff is off to an extreme like natural language text? It's human language. How do we govern that? We know how to create standards for structured data. How do you have standards for that? And I have to say, in the world of BI and data warehousing, we could cheat on this a little bit because data comes from many sources in the full gamut, from structured to unstructured. Even the semi-structured stuff like mainframe data and XML, didn't even mention that one. But when it comes into BI and data warehousing, we're pretty ruthless about converting it into structured formats. And in fact, we have a technology called extract, transform, and load, or ETL. And the T in the middle of it, that's where a lot of this data gets translated into relational structures that most of our BI tools and the data warehouse typically require. So in a lot of ways, we can cheat on that and just govern the data after it's been transformed. Now, I'll give you a quick example. A lot of our customers at TDWI are doing some kind of customer sentiment analysis. And quite often, this is based on text. So a lot of companies provide help and support for their customers through a website. And many of us have done that. You've gone to the website and you've chatted. It's kind of like instant messaging with a representative of the company you're getting support from. And so that's actually a great source of text from which you can figure out customer sentiment. Out on the leading edge, if you can gain access to social media data, then you can find out what your customers are saying about you and your products offline from you, that kind of thing. So there are technologies for text mining and text analytics. And this typically is like conversion. It reads human language, but it can create rows that go into structured tables. So far, we're just governing that structured data that after the T and ETL or after the conversion that text analytics does. And so a big question we're waiting to answer, maybe you got something to contribute here, George. We're trying to figure out, do we need to go upstream? Do we need to stick our nose outside of BI and data warehousing and start trying to govern the origins of a lot of this textual and unstructured data? What do you think, George?
I think we do. I think ultimately you've got to until you do that, you're not really going to get to the heart of this. But let me make a comment. We have an extremely powerful fraud prevention solution that sits on top of our EDW, and we have technology that assists us in data cleansing in the whole ETL space, which Philip has mentioned. So as he said, the technologies are out there and have matured to a point that we can make pretty serious inroads here. But if I go back to the structured and unstructured discussion for just a moment, again, historically, very structured. Our repositories, our warehouses, We're all about structured data. For us, it was private. We have a lot of private, what we call PII data that's in there, but really didn't have actions. And so again, we'll circle back to a 360 view of our customers. If you're really going to do that, you need to pull in that unstructured data. An example is call center information. What kinds of conversations went on, kinds of questions that our customers have, how did we respond? Marketing, how did we market to them? What kind of marketing information have we been sharing with them? All of that goes into having a complete understanding of the relationship. And so unstructured data, structured data, I think our governance program is essential for both. The same governance program really must be adapted to get the full value of managing our information truly as an asset. And so with that, then back to Philip's question, that gets into information lifecycle management. We've been doing a lot of work around application lifecycle management, and that's now drawing us into information lifecycle management, which gets us back to the root, part of what I said before in terms of not creating more, but making sure that we're leveraging what we have. And then over time on this journey, moving us into a more organized place that we want to be is all part of ultimately what would become this information management lifecycle program. And I think it's very critical.
Now, one last question for both of you. Since most companies, and don't want to generalize, but many companies, at least not most, many companies have had issues with setting the BI and BI governance frameworks in place and keep it consistently running in a smooth and a successful fashion. So is there something to be appealed to the leadership, both at the business and IT side, in order for this to be made successful? George, start with you.
It gets back to demonstrating the business value. If you want to get anybody's heartbeat up, you need to be able to tell the story, to be able to articulate what we get when what it's going to look like and what it's going to mean. What's the business value going to mean to the bank, in my case, or to the company? And historically, we've not been good at telling that story, but you really need to. And we've talked about several elements of that this morning together on how to demonstrate that, either through revenue generation or cost reduction or fraud prevention or adherence to policies and so forth. So you need to tell the story. And when you do that, I think like Field of Dreams, they will come. So.
All right, 30 seconds. Philip.
Yeah, I think for BI governance and data governance to continue rolling forward successfully in the future, it does depend on business value, like George said. And again, I'd relate it back to the balance of Libra that I mentioned earlier. For a lot of companies, that's really the business value is avoiding problems that result from non-compliance. Sometimes non-compliance can even lead to very large fines for a company. It could be that dramatic. In other cases, it could just lead to problems with your customers and partners because you didn't treat their information properly. But there are also opportunities when you improve the quality of data, and it's not just data quality. If you improve the semantics so you can share it across the enterprise much better, and that's what master data management and metadata management do for you when they're governed, data architecture and things like that help as well, then a company can get to those data sharing goals it's got that it's set ahead for itself, like the 360-degree view of the customer. You'll never have that broad of a view to enable even more prospects with your customer until you're able to share data. And data governance it's not just about control and compliance. It's also about enabling the sharing of data.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great points.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, thank you so much again, Philip and George, for sharing your thoughts about how BI governance can indeed be made a reality and made a rolling success. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite.
Great being here.
And if you have any questions and or thoughts, please send us to questions@ciotalkradio.com. That is questions@ciotalkradio.com. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.